Hey everyone, my name's Ali. Welcome back to the channel. And I know it's been a long time, probably 8 months or so, and but I'm back with a new video. And for all the context for where I've been, what I've been working on, um, job application stuff, other stuff, SaaS products, and I've been working on a lot of cool things recently. So I made a separate video for anyone who wants to watch that. It will be on for a while, and it's actually an unlisted section of the YouTube, so it's in the description, so you guys can go and watch that. But for this one, I actually wanted to dive straight into this project. It's a really cool project I built, and it's a small project, not like my other videos. It's not a very long project, but I wanted to teach something new, which is parallel routes and interception in Next.js 13.3. And I know recently just Next.js 13.4 got released, and they actually merged the app router, and now they actually recommend the app router approach. And there's a lot of things happening, and I know it's like the web space is moving quite fast. But yeah, this video's purpose would be to actually teach Next.js 13 as well, on how to use the app directory and server components and all these kind of things. So if any beginners are watching this, of course, it's going to be completely beginner friendly. While at the same time, I'm going to be teaching something, a new feature of Next.js, which is like parallel routes and interception with an e-commerce build. So if I click on this product, for instance, we can see right now this is actually the deployed version. So there's some bugs on this one, which happened before because I built this a while ago. But yeah, we can see this is intercepting this route called product/2. This is the route. And if I actually refresh the page, watch what happens, guys. So if I refresh this page, if I refresh this, right, it actually redirects me to the product/2 page, which is what exactly happens with the interception. There were some bugs at that time when I was building this, and I built this a while ago. I recorded the video. It was like 3 hours long or so, and it didn't record for me. The file saved, it actually failed to record. So I'm actually kind of doing this again. But we can see this is what the project is about. There's some nice loading animations. And of course, there's a few bugs still on this because I was building this with the Next.js. It was built with an older version of Next.js, but now we're going to be building with the latest version, and I think those things are fixed now with routes and interception. So we can see whenever we click on any single modal, actually this modal pops up, and if I click outside of this modal, we actually are redirected back to our homepage. This is something really nice and interesting, because what happens is actually keeps the track of the product which the user was looking at. So for instance, let's say I close the app and I came back on the app later on, it's going to be refreshed and it's going to be showing me this exact product which I was viewing before. And of course, this is just one single use case. There are many use cases for this. For instance, I could literally see my root params when I'm actually clicking on any of these things. So again, sometimes it doesn't work here is because of the older version of Next.js. But if I like to click, let me just refresh and let's try again. Yeah, so when I click here, we see that this actually opens up this modal, and we can actually see that actually this modal is there. And when I click on this button called view full details, of course it's gonna take me to this exact page. So I'm on this page now. But for instance, if I just again, the same thing's happening. um, and again, we can see this modal pops up, right? So this is really useful because all this information I'm actually getting here is using params. And of course, because we have this product/6 dynamic param here. And of course, we are just using a Fakestore API here, just to demonstrate some products. It's a fairly simple project. And the purpose again is to teach everyone about server components and Next.js 13 if you're not up to it. But yeah, let's get started with this. As with all my videos, let's get started by opening our terminal. And I'm just gonna not do the update right now. So I hope the font size is bigger actually. So yeah, let's get started. So we're gonna be using the create next app at latest. So I'm gonna just open up my recursive search by just pressing like Control R. You can do something called recursive search, and I could just search for my create next app, and I'm gonna be typing here. It's gonna be an e-commerce app directory. I'm just gonna say YouTube demo. So I know it's quite a long name. You can name it whatever you want, but I'm gonna be using this command called npx create next app at latest, and let's press enter. Oh, by the way, I'm in my wrong directory. Oops, sorry guys. I was in another one of my directory. So I'm gonna go back a level inside of my builds, and then I'm gonna actually paste this command. Um, oops. So let's actually paste this command. Yeah. So I'm gonna initialize my create next app at latest. And by the way, the at latest command now actually asks you some really, really cool stuff. Like if you want to be using Tailwind and if you want to be using TypeScript, we are going to be using TypeScript for this project. So I'm gonna say yes. We are also going to be using ESLint. So I'm gonna click on yes. And it asks for Tailwind CSS. Of course, I'm gonna be using that, but I'm not gonna be using source directory, however. So I'm gonna say no. And now they actually ask you to use the app router. They actually recommend you. So I'm going to say yes, of course, because you're going to be learning new things. And we don't want to customize the default import alias. So we want to basically want to stick to all the default options, right? That's the recommended way to go. Now our app is going to be initialized, and again, this app is not actually communicating with any sort of database. We're not learning the purpose of making this video is to solely teach about Next.js 13 and the new features. So that's the purpose of this video. However, we could for the future parts and the future videos, you could probably build some authentication stuff and connect this with database and do whatever we want basically. And this cool logo, I actually got this from a really, really nice website. I don't remember the name anymore, but I think it's called Iconify or something. It's an AI website. I'm gonna add that in the description as well. But yeah, we see our package is initialized. So we're gonna basically cd into that directory. So I'm gonna say e-commerce app directory YouTube demo. And I'm actually gonna open this inside of my Visual Studio Code. So the way I actually did this is by saying code insiders space dot to open it inside my code. If you're using Visual Studio Code, you just have to install this something called shell command. If you like press Command Shift P, and if you type shell, you can install this command up in path, and you can actually do this, open this inside of your code directly by just typing this in. So here we go. We see our brand new project now. This is our brand new project. And the first thing I'm actually going to be doing, so first of all, if you're actually new to Next.js 13 and all these things, don't be scared and overwhelmed by all this new stuff. Like, and if you're used to pages and pages directory and stuff like that, because I'm going to be teaching everything from scratch how it works. So first of all, let's actually start our server and let's see what we can see on the browser, right? So I'm going to open up my terminal by pressing Command J, close my sidebar because we don't need it right now. And you want to check which package lock you're using. So I'm actually using package lock. If you're using yarn lock, you probably want to use yarn. Since I'm using package lock, I'm going to stick to npm, and I'm going to say npm run dev to run our server. And let's go back to Chrome. Let's actually see what we can see on the browser. And we can see our beautiful homepage. It looks really sick, by the way, this homepage. I love the design here. And they have designed this completely with Tailwind CSS, which we're going to be using. And I use Tailwind CSS for pretty much everything I work on, even in production projects and all of my products, basically. So yeah, let's get back to this. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna close the terminal now. And the first thing I want to do is I want to remove all this stuff because we are not gonna be needing this. We're gonna be starting it from scratch. And I'm gonna remove all this. Press save. Go back. We see this is blank, but still the background is actually black. So we also want to change that. And we also want to remove the styling, remove the image, and save it. So we get a clean slate. Now we want to actually remove our background as well. So for removing the background, I'm going to navigate to my globals.css, and I'm going to remove this body and the media and the root thing. And now if I actually remove this, this is going to be giving me a clean slate. And now we can just type something in to verify this, like in H1 Uh, and I'm just gonna say hello world, the classic way. And here we go. You see a clean, nice slate now. The reason I love to use create next step is because it actually gives you all these things configured by default. So we don't have to go ahead and install Tailwind manually. We can see there's a tailwind.config.js file. And this is pretty much similar to the pages directory. There's nothing changed in this. It's completely identical to how you used to install Tailwind in our the pages directory. I'm just going to remove this background image because we didn't actually have this. The Next.js template had this before. So I'm going to remove that. And you see it's purging three things now. Before it only used to purge these two. Now it's also purging our app directory because we are going to be using the app directory, right? So coming back to our app directory, let's inside our app directory, we can see we have a global CSS and we have a layout. So layout is something new in, of course, in the Next.js13 app directory. Before it wasn't there. So there are these nice conventions we have to follow now with the new approach, which is like layout.tsx, page.tsx. And basically what this means is the page.tsx represents your home page, which because it's directly inside of app directory. And then there's a layout, right? Now the layout is very simple. All this basically means is, of course, anything which you want to be the part of the layout, right? So for instance, let's say I want my header to appear on every single page. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put my header inside of the layout. So let's actually do this right now. I'm just gonna like demonstrate a few things before getting into the project actually. So I'm going to remove this font. So they also released a new font approach. So you can actually import different sort of fonts from Google Fonts. Uh, but yeah, this is increased a lot of different features. So I can't talk about every single feature in this video, but it's really cool. So I'm going to remove that font and also the metadata, which is which is again another new feature, right? So that's a metadata API. If you actually using TypeScript, we can see different. For now, we can't actually see, but we can see different like tags and stuff here, which goes into the metadata. Anyways, coming back to the header. So let's actually create a simple header, and remember, everything needs to be inside of your body. You can't create a header outside the body, right? It's HTML body, and then everything goes inside the body, right? So I'm just going to create a header and I'm just going to say, this is the header, right? I'm just going to say this is the header. Now, I'm just going to save this file and let's go back. We can see this is the header here. Now, the cool part about this layout component is basically how this works is we have something called children here. So if I uncomment this children out, we can see the bottom part, which was saying hello world, is actually gone now. So technically, this actually means that the children is actually the page content for every single layout. So this is like fairly easy once you get the hang of this. Is basically anything. Think of like your header and footer, which are your main components, and they're going to be there on every single page. In a entirely simple application, a complex, a fairly simple application, you're gonna have header and footer every single page, right? That makes sense. So you can have your header and you can have your footer. Let's just say this is the footer, right? And if I actually save this, we see everything on every single page that's gonna appear. Now, how can we verify this that this exists on every single page? Now we can create our new single page. So this is our main index page, which is called our home page. Before this used to be something called index.tsx inside of pages. Now it's page.tsx. So let's create a folder. The new way of doing creating a new page is basically creating a folder and naming whatever page you want it to be. And that needs to be inside of app directory, by the way. So let's say we want to create like a product page because we're going to be building an e-commerce website, right? So we have a product folder. Now inside of our product folder, we have a file called page.tsx, right? And again, I'm naming this the same page.tsx, but the difference this time is that this page.tsx exists inside of our product folder. So it's not clashing with our in home index page.tsx, right? Because this represents the index page, this represents the product page. Now I'm gonna open our nice snippets. I'm gonna use RFCE, and basically these are really nice snippets. So I installed something called so if you type ES7, go into your extensions. I've installed, I think it's this one. Yeah, I think it's this one. No, it's actually this one. It has 8 million downloads. So it's ES7 React Redux React Native snippets. It gives you these nice little snippets. So you don't want to write this by yourself if you know about your fundamentals, right? So I'm just gonna change this to product page. I'm gonna remove the import React because we don't need it anymore. And I'm just gonna save this, right? And now let's actually try to navigate to slash product. If I go here, and here we go. The only thing, if you guys actually looked at this, the only thing that actually changed, I'm gonna make this bigger. Let's go back. We see the only thing that's changing is the hello world and product page. And by the way, the new Next.js 13 is extremely powerful. It uses something called streaming as well. So streaming allows you to render different part of your on a single page you have like multiple components. So because of something called server components now, we can render components on a different basis. So if there are some client components, they can have different loading animations. It's an entirely different concept, but you can read about it, and it's something really, really cool and really powerful. It uses streaming. Now we can see we have our header and footer on both the pages. But the only thing that's changing is the children between that, right? And the children are basically the page content. So that's actually the children. So that's the way to simplify this whole thing, the layout and all these things. In the beginning, it can be a bit intimidating. Like you could be like, "Oh, what's this layout?" And it kind of like sucks because you don't understand this. But trust me, it's a really, really nice approach. And the benefit of using this is we can have our separate header components and footer components in the layout, and we don't want to clutter this out with our main page, right? Because it doesn't make sense to repeat yourself over and over again. Now, I hope any newbies, any beginners got the hang of the layout thing, which we are using here inside of our new Next.js, of course. And of course, we're going to be building a header component as well. So I'm going to be demonstrating this again. But yeah, this is how the layout thing works. But now let's get started with our application. So let's go back to our main page.tsx, and inside of our main page.tsx, what the things we're gonna have is we're gonna be having a section. So if we actually go back to our deployed app, we can see we have a header. There's some login sign up buttons that don't actually work right now, but they're just there for purely UI. And then we have our beautiful application that shows deals of the day, right? It's fairly simple again. So we just basically going to have a section. So let's create a section, right? This section is going to have a heading tag. So it's going to have a title, which is going to say deals of the day, right? And of course, we're going to style this up. The way we're going to style this, I'm just going to say text 5XL. Again, I'm using Tailwind for styling. So all these stylings, you guys can see I can get all these little styles from Tailwind. These are utility classes in Tailwind CSS. So if you are wondering how am I getting this, I've just installed an extension called Tailwind CSS. So if you search for Tailwind, you can see Tailwind Labs. It's provided by them, Tailwind Labs actually, and you can install this. And you're gonna get all these nice utility classes. And by the way, if you're new to Tailwind, if you hover over any of the styles, you could actually see the actual CSS for that. So you could see what CSS this means, and it's really, really fast, right? It's basically writing these 2 lines of CSS in just this utility class. So Tailwind is the way to go, and it's really powerful. So we're gonna say font bold, and we are also going to be applying text center. So I'm just gonna say text center, and let's go back and let's see this one. So we have our text in the center, font bold, and I also, by the way, I actually integrated fonts as well. So I'm also going to be showing you guys how to integrate fonts in the newer way as well, in an optimized way, basically. So that's really cool as well. For our section, I'm gonna give some styling here as well. So for the section, I'm just gonna say it's gonna be a flex box, and the direction is gonna be flex column. There's gonna be some spacing between the H1 and the div which you're gonna have here. So that spacing is gonna be space WAF 12, and there's gonna be some padding from the bottom. And for this current div, we are going to be basically having a single, so we're going to be mapping through different products here. So the way we are going to be doing this is we're going to be having a product component here. So I'm just going to comment this out for now, but I'm going to basically do it like this. So we know that we're going to have a bunch of product components here. So I'm just going to create like bunch of products here. So this is going to be for our products. And as for the styling for this, we're going to say, actually, we're going to style this out later, so it makes sense. But this is basically our deals of the day, and we're gonna have a bunch of products there. So now I think we could actually use the API and actually see the products coming in, right? Um, so actually it all makes sense. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna show you guys the Fakestore API now. So we're gonna be using something called FakestoreAPI.com, and we can see this is the website for this, and they have a GitHub repo, and you can read the documentation as well. And how it can be used is fairly simple. If you actually go to this, if you have ever used the REST API, you might, this is fairly easy. If you have never used it, I'm gonna make it very simple and understandable. So we can see if you go to this route, we can see a bunch of different products, and there are like 20 products we get. We can't get more than 20. There's a limit of getting 20 products. And the cool part about this API is that even if you want to get a dynamic product, let's say product one, we could actually go ahead and get that. And that will only return me back that specific product. Um, and we can also limit results to less than 20. Of course, there's a bunch of stuff we can do. We can do sorting, can do with all categories. It's a really, really good API. Oh, we can also add new products. That's really, really cool. So if you want to use this for demonstration, it's really good. So I'm going to be using this route, of course, to fetch some products. Fairly simple. So I'm just going to copy this route. Now, the really, really good part about using the new Next.js, Next.js 13 and server components and all this is that we could actually change our function, and we can actually use async await at the top level. And what I basically mean by this is that before, in when we are using like the old Next.js approach in React, for instance, we can't actually change this function to asynchronous function, right? We can't, sorry, we do it here. Uh, my bad. So we can't actually do this. But now, if I actually save this file, and let's actually go back to our application and refresh, there's no error. We can actually do this. Before in React, when we used to do this, we can't actually do this. That this is wrong. We can't convert our component to asynchronous async await. Like we can't do this. But now we can actually, and this is just a component, right? This is just a page, it's a component. So we can use this. Now, the moment I actually change this, the reason we can actually use this, by the way, is because this is server first. So this is everything inside of your app basically is a server component. So the layout, the page, everything is a server component, right? Now, to basically convert this to a client component, and why do we need to convert this to a client component? So let's say if you have any buttons or if you have any on clicks, so anything that has the window object attached to it, right? So, and you can read more about this in depth, but I'm just gonna make it fairly simple. So anything in JavaScript that has a window object attached, that is basically a client. It's a browser thing, right? It needs the browser thing. It needs the browser, right? So that basically means that we have to have some JavaScript shipped there, right? So we need to convert it to client into a client component because this is server first. Everything is a server component. And also use states, use effects, and all these things. So what do we want to do is we want to reduce our use states, use effects, and of course, by reduce, I don't mean that don't use states and use effects. Use them wherever it's necessary, but try to minimize as much as possible because you will be shipping less JavaScript, means that your websites will be more faster, right? If your websites are purely rendering on the server, everything's like it'll be super fast and dynamic, right? You are not shipping any sort of JavaScript. So that's a really good way to put this in. Now, to convert anything to a client component, we just have to use a directive. Now, these things are called directive. There are a bunch of these things. It's called use server, but we don't have to use server here because it's use server by default. So we don't have to do this. But this is not a client component. So if I actually save this now, and let's actually go back. It's still working, uh, but this will error out once we actually fetch, and we will see this in action. So once we actually fetch the products, this is gonna error. So now what I'm gonna do is, because my function is an asynchronous function, right? So I can basically fetch something on the top level here. I can say response await, and actually GitHub Copilot just giving me the exact thing I wanted to use, and I want to get some product. But before we actually do this, let me refresh this. Let's actually open up our console. So nothing's coming back here. This is still working fine. but let's actually try to use this now. So I'm also going to get my products, and also I'm going to get my products. I'm going to say await response.json, and let's actually console log our products, and let's see if there's an error now. So let's open up our console. Okay, we see this thing. So this is not actually erroring out. This is fine. This is actually working fine. We see our products on the console. But since we actually converted this to a client component, this shouldn't be happening. And if I actually disable this, let's actually see if we can use state as well here. So um, let's actually try to just have some state, and let's just comment this for now. And what I'm going to do is, since this is a client component, this should be allowing us to use state. But the moment I actually disable this, we shouldn't be able to use state anymore. Let's go back, and we see here, we see the error, right? So we see you are importing a component that needs use state. It only works on a client component, but none of its parents are marked with use client, right? So they are server components by default, right? So this basically means that we can't actually use the use state. So that means this is still working. But I'm not sure why it's not working for this thing. Because if this is a client component, we shouldn't be able to fetch this stuff. Anyways, if we are able to fetch this, that's fine. But I think if we actually kind of try to display this, this won't work. I think so. So if I try to display this, so I'm just gonna map through each and every single product, and let's see if we can render something. So of course, because we are mapping, we want to make sure we have a key. So I'm just gonna say product.id, and let's just say I think there's some stuff like product.title, so we can just view this in the response back. So if I actually use this and see what we're getting back, we have an ID and we have a title. So let's try to render a title, and let's see if this actually works. This shouldn't work probably because this is a client component, and the async await call shouldn't work in a client component. So if we go back right now, oh, we see that this actually works. So they might have changed this in the newer version, which I might have missed. So something might have changed in the newer version of Next.js, because right now we are actually using. So if we go back and we actually see, we're actually using 13.4.1. So that's like the latest version, and they really had a really nice table as well, which I wanted to show you guys. So to see a really nice difference. So there was this beta website which is no longer beta, I think. They actually joined this with the newer, we can see nextjs.org. So this is actually no longer beta anymore. Before, this used to be beta, but there was a really nice table between the differences in both of these things. So if I search for like differences between server and client, and trust me guys, this is it's not working right now. It's because they're literally using the latest version of Next.js. And yeah, here we go. This is actually the one which I wanted to show you guys. So we can see that in our client components, all the tick marks, and we can see the server component as well, right? So what we can't do in client components is we can't add any interactivity. We can't do use states, use effects, and use browser only APIs. And here we go, guys. Here we go. This is what I was mentioning, right? So we can't actually fetch data in a client component. So for some reason, this is still working, but but this shouldn't be. So I'm not sure why this is still working. Still working. It's on the but this is a client component, and the proof of this that this is a client component is that we have the console logs on the browser. So if I actually console log my products, we can see the console logs are on the browser. What happens in a server component is that when I comment this out, we would be seeing all our consoles on the terminal here, and we won't be seeing any consoles. If I actually refresh this, we can't see any console logs here, right? The reason we can't, and in the beginning, you might be like overrun by this, by what's happening, why can't I see my consoles? But actually, you can see your console, but it's on the server. It's no longer on the browser, so you can see all your console logs on your terminal here. But what I can't figure out is that why we can actually fetch this stuff, because it's clearly mentioned here that we can't fetch data in a client component. I might have missed something though, so I'm not sure. Anyways, this shouldn't work in a client component. But yeah, so right now we see I've actually removed the client, so we don't need the use state, of course. So what I'm doing is this is a server component, and the reason, the way you can actually verify this is that you can see your console logs on the server and not on the client, not on the browser, right? So this means that this is a server component. Now, the next thing we're actually gonna do is we can actually have our products, but there's a one problem which I don't like with this. Since we are using TypeScript, we can see that the parameter product implicitly has any type. So now we have to create a nice type definition for this, because what we can see is we can see that when I press dot here, I don't get my nice IntelliSense. But when we are using TypeScript, we need to get this nice IntelliSense, right? So to use our different types and stuff. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to, at my package lock level, at my root level, I'm going to create a new file, and it's going to be called typings.d.typescript. And inside of this file, I'm going to be creating a typing for our product. And I'm just going to quickly actually get this up because I've already done this. So this is going to be our type for the product. It's going to have an ID, and it's going to have a title of string, price of number, description, a category, and also a rating. And the way I actually determine all the types coming back for the product here is the way I actually do this is, of course, you can either go here and you can actually look at the type here, or you can just console log the different uh, products, and you can look there as well. So you can see ID is a number, price is a number, rate and count is also a number, all the rest are strings. So this is how I determine this type. But we can create this nice typings file and have all of our typings inside of this file. Now, the next thing we want to do is we want to basically say, because we have our nice typings, now what we want to do is we want to say that this is basically a type of my product, and you want to put an array after this, because this is multiple products. This is an array of products, right? So when we do like this, it basically means it's an array of one single product like this, right? And now we see the error is gone. There's no more error anymore. Now when we hover over this, we can see this is of type product, right? Which is really, really nice. And I can see when I press dot, boom, you get all our nice IntelliSense. I really, really love TypeScript because of these reasons, right? And every single company, by the way, like every single production level company, they're using TypeScript now. And even if a company isn't using TypeScript, you could add like tremendous value to a company by just like integrating into TypeScript. So now we have our nice product mapping, and we have the key, but I don't want to actually work or keep on working like this. I want to create this and refactor this into a product. So what I'm going to do is just going to copy this, and we created a product at the bottom. So I'm just going to actually remove this. And of course, this whole thing needs to be contained inside a div. But where do we create components now? So again, the way we create components is we want to create components inside of our a root directory. You don't want to create components inside of app, because remember, it is containing all the routes, all your pages. So you want to create it outside of the app, and you can create it at root level. And I'm just going to name it components, the folder. And now I'm going to create a file inside of this. It's going to be called product.tsx. Again, I'm going to use my snippet, rfce. This is going to be a product component. And again, something I want to actually mention is this is again going to be a server component. So anything you have, inside of components in app directory is a server component by default until you change it to a client component. So it always is a server component. And the way again you can verify this is by console logging and doing stuff like that. When you console log, none of your logs should be on the browser, and you're gonna verify this here as well, that this is a server component. Now we want to basically import this. So I'm just gonna import this, and now we have these nice little at things. Before we didn't used to have this. These are import aliases, and they are configured by default by Next.js. So really, really cool. And of course, don't forget the key, because that's super important since we are mapping through different products. So we have the key. Let's go back to our page, and let's refresh this unsupported server component type, right? The reason we're getting this error is because we don't have any products here, right? So what I'm gonna do is, of course, in this product, we want to first, of course, create this product, and we don't want to give the key here. So I'm just gonna type product here, and let's save this. And we see we have our 20 different products, right? Let's go back to our app. Now, of course, how do we render dynamic product information? By just sending in a prop, right? That's the easiest way we can do this. So I'm just gonna send in a prop. And again, we're using TypeScript, so it's shouting at us saying property product does not exist. And I actually recommend anyone, if you're new to TypeScript, like get a hang of reading these error messages, right? But it goes like it adds so much value because you understand different types of TypeScript errors. And I literally learned so much by just reading these errors. It says does not exist. It just basically means we haven't created a type for this. So, the product is not expecting a type, right? So it doesn't make sense. We're going to go inside of product. And of course, the way we do with ES6 destructuring, I'm just going to destructure back our product. And it's going to be of type props. Now, this is like of type props. This is something I need to create. And with TypeScript, you can create types using two things. You can either create like an interface or you can create a type. Interfaces can be extended, and if you're coming from a Java background, of course, you might know that interfaces are more like they could be extended and stuff like that. But I'm not gonna like get in too much into that, so I'm just gonna go along with props. The type props, and you could name this whatever you want. Honestly, you could name this product props. So if you name like product props, you can just change this to product props. It doesn't matter. I'm just gonna name it to props because I like to keep it short. And then we have a product here. Remember, we defined the type inside of our typings of product. So I'm just gonna do that. And we don't even have to like import that. That's like really, really cool. It just knows that it's coming from a typings.d.ts file. And we see this nice product typing now, right? Now, if we save this and go back to our app, there's no more error anymore. And the reason we don't actually see any error is because now it's actually perfectly typed in. Now, if I remove this product, however, we see there's an error. Now, what's the error? Property product is missing, right? That's the key. It's missing. It's missing because we defined that we want a product. It's expecting a product now, and we are not sending a product. Now you can also override this by just making this optional and just like typing a question mark here. So if I save this, we no longer see an error, but we don't want to do this. However, here we are expecting a product, so we don't want to add question mark and make this optional. So that's something you should know. It's a really nice TypeScript feature. But now we have our nice product. Now let's start building our nice product component. And by the way, one thing I forgot to mention in the finished build, guys, whenever I refresh the app, we see this nice loading, right? This is also something I've done. So something new I wanted to teach with the Next.js image component, really, really cool. And even if you route to like a different page, we click this, we see it happens everywhere. And this is, by the way, a dynamic loading. It's a dynamic image component, right? I've created. So something really, really useful. But let's go back to our default app and let's start building our product component. So I'm just gonna go to product. So here's our product, and our product component is going to be a Next.js. It's going to be wrapped around like a Next.js link. And now we see it actually shouts and it says href is required. So we always need to send in an href attribute in link. It's a required attribute. So what's going to be our href? It's going to be fairly simple. I'm gonna open like backticks for string interpolation because I'm gonna add a string here. I'm gonna say it's gonna route to slash product slash and this is gonna be a dynamic thing, and it's going to be product.id. And what I'm basically trying to do here is this is going to be a link, right? So this is going to be routing to a dynamic product page, right? And every product is going to be like different and unique, right? So it's going to be routing to a dynamic product page. And we're going to be sending in the ID here for this product page. And remember, at the start of this project, we actually created a product page. So we didn't create a dynamic product page, but we actually created like a product page. So we still have to create a dynamic product page, which I'm going to explain in a while. But let's keep on building this. So the first thing is a link. and then we have a div inside of this, and this div is going to contain another component, which is going to be a product image. And this product image, we're going to be sending in the product we received, and we are also going to be sending another prop called fill. And this is, again, if you guys guessed it, this is going to be the dynamic, the image component, which I was talking about. And this is going to be really, really powerful, by the way. So you have this product image. It's contained inside a div. So I'm passing in fill here. And next thing, so I'm just going to comment this for now, and let's go and build the rest of the component first. So the next thing is I'm going to render out two p tags. And the first one is going to contain the title. So I'm just going to say product.title. The second one is going to contain the price. So I'm just going to say product.price. Let's save this. Let's go back to our app. Let's see what we can see here. So we see the title, we see the price. Again, it's not looking the best right now, but we're getting there, right? We're getting there. So we have the price and we have the title. Next thing, I want to actually give a certain width to this title, and I also want to truncate. So there's a nice property in Tailwind which actually truncates this if it actually goes more than this width, right? So I set a fixed width. If any title which is more than this, we can see it actually truncates this and gives 3 dots to it. And it's going to come in really handy. As we can see here, we have price as well. And we don't want to show the full titles, right? Because it's going to look awful then. So a really nice thing in Tailwind you can do. The next thing for the price, I just want to put a dollar symbol here. So of course it makes sense that it's a price. The next thing, we're gonna have a product description. So I'm just gonna say product description, right? Uh, Beautiful, we have a product description. Now let's actually style this a bit. So the styling is gonna be, it's gonna be an italic, and it's gonna have text extra small. The width is going to be 64. And there's going to be a line clamp I'm going to be giving here. And this is another new one, which is, again, a really, really good property in Tailwind. And just look at this. Like, if I actually hover over this, guys, we're writing like 4 lines of CSS. If you're still not like into Tailwind and you think it's bad or something, you literally increases your productivity by, I would say, 100x. Like, literally, you're writing 4 lines of CSS in just like this utility class, right? Which is also given to you by an extension, right? So I don't even have to write this completely in. I just have this extension. I just use this. So it's really insanely fast, I would say. So now what this new line cam property actually does is actually we can see it beautifully cuts every single, and by the way, since it's a link, right? Whenever I click on it, we see this dynamic product page. But since we don't have this page right now, it's giving us 404 because we haven't created this page. What we did create was a product page. So it was this page. We didn't create a dynamic product page. But the line truncate, as we can see, is actually cuts out every single description to 2 lines. So that's because we said line clamp to 2. So if I did to 3, it would show 3 lines, right? So really straightforward, really, really nice property to use. Of course, I don't want to use truncate here because since it's a description, so it has to be like a bit longer, and it kind of makes sense. That's why. Now, what's the next thing? We actually forgot to style this container there for these two p-tags. So I'm just gonna say font semi-bold here. This is something was looking off here. And I'm gonna display flex side by side, item center. I'm gonna say justify between. I want some margin from top and bottom. Just save that. And here we go. Here we go. Now it's looking, of course, it's spanning all across our, like across our website, but we don't want this. We're going to give some certain max width properties, which will look, that it will kind of look nice. So the next thing we want to actually style our link component as well. So for our link component, we're going to have a height of 96. We're going to say flex box, and the direction has to be flex column. There's going to be some padding because I love padding. There's going to be some border, some group. And when we hover over it, I'm going to give a really nice animation. So on our finished build, we can see we have this really nice subtle animation, right? It looks really, really clean. And there's some opacity thing going on if you guys notice. Like I'm just blurring the opacity, like making it a bit light so we see this nice effect, right? So what I'm gonna do is I have this hover scale 105 and I'm gonna give a transition of transform and I'm gonna say ease out. The duration I want it to be a set of 200. Save this, let's go back and we see this beautiful effect happening right now. Of course, some one thing is missing, which is the image component. So we're gonna, of course, have the image component. So the next thing, I think naturally we should work on work on the image component. And one thing before I forget is we have a prefetch to false here. And the reason why we turn this to false is because if you don't have this to false, it's prefetching every single page, right? As it says, it prefetches every single page in the background, right? And what happens is that the interception, the root interception thing, which we'll be integrating later on, wouldn't be working nicely with this. It wasn't playing along nicely with the prefetch to true. So I had to disable this to false. So we don't have prefetch turned on for this particular reason. So I'm just gonna keep it false right now. By default, it's true. That's why I had to say false here. So that's our beautiful product component. The one thing which is missing is, of course, our product image, right? That's the thing which is missing. So now let's actually build this product image component. So inside of our components directory, I'm going to create a new file called product image.tsx, rfce, and product image. And let's actually import this as well. Now, this product image should be expecting our product and fill. It should be expecting two different props, right? So what I'm going to do is go inside of my product image. And here, again, we're going to do a destructuring, and I'm just going to say product and fill, and of course it's going to be of type props. Now we need to define props here, so I'm going to say type props, and the first one is going to be of type product. The second one is going to be a Boolean value, but it will be a conditional Boolean value. So what I mean is basically not every single image we are going to be using is going to be so in Next.js, by the way, first of all, in Next.js, we have like, we can render images, we can send in this fill prop in images. So if you want to look at this, what I basically mean is you can go in Next.js in documentation, and you can search for the image component. So if you go and search for the image component, basically what happens is image component accepts all these props. And the reason we want to use Next.js image component is because they optimize images really like a lot. And basically on your website, you don't want to have normal image tags anymore. And they actually don't recommend that. They recommend to use the Next.js image component because it has really advanced optimization, such as they use an API, and it optimizes in WebP format, and there's so many things that go in the background, but it's really worth it to use the image component. It accepts these props. We can see it accepts a prop called fill prop. So whenever we turn the fill prop to like true, so if I actually go and search for fill, and we go and see an example here, so we see fill. If we turn this to true, we need to basically have a container there. So whenever we turn a fill prop to true, we see we need to have a container div always for the image. But think about it, right? If you're creating a dynamic image component, it doesn't actually make sense to always have the fill, right? Because sometimes you don't even need the fill, right? And the reason we need the fill is to have some extra features, like we could set the container to relative and like do some more stuff like that. But honestly, we don't want to send in fill every single time. So even if I'm not sending, this basically means it's a normal image, Next.js image component without the fill prop. So it's gonna conditionally render the image component. But yeah, it's useful in situations where we want to send in. Now, what I'm actually gonna do is let's keep on building our product image. So inside of our product image, since we are actually getting back the product, what I can do, since I have these two things, right, is I could be really smart, and I'm going to actually turn this into a React fragment. And here I'm going to open a curly brace, and I'm going to say, if the fill prop is true, we want to have the Next.js image component. Either way, we're going to use the image component, right? But if it's not true, what we can say is we also have the image component, but if we have the fill which is true, we can just say the fill here, right? Because Next.js accepts this fill. And the things which are missing are, of course, the source and the alt property. So these things are compulsory now. Before they used to be optional. The alt is also compulsory, so we have to send in an alt property. The alt, it can be the product.title. So you can just say product.title. The source needs to be the product.image. That needs to be the source. And if it's not a fill, however, we have a different image component. So I'm just going to actually copy this from my finished build. So if I copy this, we can see we have this nice loading property as well. So I actually integrated some really nice loading, which I'm going to explain how I actually did this. It's very, very simple. So I have a use state for the loading and the set loading. So I'm going to get this from React. And remember what I said before, whenever we have any use states or stuff like that, we want to convert our component to a client component, because right now, this component is a server component. If I actually save this and go back to our app, here we go. The first thing we see is we see you are importing component and needs use state, right? That's exactly what I explained in the beginning. So this needs to have a directive called use client, right? So we have to say use client here. And now if I go back, refresh our app, now that error is gone, but we have another error which is saying that our domain is not whitelisted, right? So we're using an external domain called Fakestore API.com. Whenever we are using a Next.js image component, we have to whitelist all of our domains. So what we need to do is go into our nextconfig.js, and here we can basically say, so inside of my next config, let me see. So we have some options here. So if I actually open up my command space, we see different options here. There's an option for images here. So we want to render that, and we want to have different domains here. Now inside of these domains, we don't want to have localhost and Cloudinary. Instead, we want to have this fake store. And the way I got this is they actually give you the URL of this. We can see it actually tells you the host name. So we want to copy this host name, whichever domain you're using, and you want to whitelist in here. Now, I just want to save this. And it will automatically restart the server to apply the changes. Before we had to like cut the server, restart over again. Now in the newer versions, we don't even have to cut the server. It's really, really fast. It automatically restarts the server because we changed the next config file. Now, if we go back to our website, if we refresh it, we shouldn't be seeing this error anymore. And we should be able to see our nice images. There we go. Of course, they're not looking nice right now. They're really huge, and I think the website's probably crashed as well. Oh my God. So yeah, it's really huge images. So yeah, but they're highly optimized. So don't get me wrong, they're highly optimized because you're using Next.js image component, right? So of course, there's some things which are missing here, which we want to fix. So first of all, I was gonna explain this loading and on set loading thing, which we are doing with our image component. So what I'm actually doing is in Next.js image component, we have a prop. So I'm also gonna complete our current image. So I'm just gonna have an alt here. So I'm just gonna actually save this and remove the fill from here. And we can see we have our two image components. So what I'm actually doing is if we have fill to true, we want the image with the fill property in. If that's not true, we want the normal image without the fill property to be there. What I'm doing with the loading is inside of like Next.js image component, before I was showing you guys this thing, that in we have something called the image. When I actually search the image, I was showing you guys what the props it actually accepts. It also accepts a prop called onloading complete, right? And this is a really, really good function. This is a function. And if I actually search for this, I think they would probably show this in the documentation, is onloading complete is a callback function that is invoked once the image is completely loaded and the placeholder has been removed. So the callback function will be called with one argument, a reference to the underlying image element, right? It's a really, really good way. It basically receives reference to the image element, and there's a loading state which you can play around with. This is that what you can do, because it's called, so as I was searching this before, it only calls. So if I go and read that part again, it says that it's only invoked once the image is completely loaded. So this function only is invoked when the image is completely loaded. This means that once the image is completely loaded, this function is invoked onloading complete. So now think about the use case here, right? So what I can do here is once this is loaded completely, I have a callback function. So callback means we need to have it like this. So we can't just do it like this because it's a callback function, right? Now, because I have a use state thing here, I could set the loading to be false when the loading is complete, right? So this is really, really powerful because by default, I want my loading to be true, but only once the loading is complete, which means that once this function actually is invoked, I want the set loading to be false. So this means that this will be perfect every single time the image loads. Like this won't be like, this is not our manually loading, right? This is because it has a prop the Next.js image component has a prop, this is going to be like perfectly done, right? Now, if we go back to our website, here we go, guys. Look at this, right? There's a there's an error that's happening. I think that's happening because we didn't style the surrounding div here. So what I'm gonna do is, first of all, I am sometimes the error also happens because we actually changed the next config, and I know it's changed, but it's safe to restart the server always. So I'm just gonna cut the server, restart it all over again, because sometimes this actually bugs out as well. And now let me just refresh the page, and we see our images. So we see this blur effect happen, but now it's looking awful. So let's actually style the surrounding div of this image. And what I mean by the surrounding div is right now it's looking awful because remember when we said fill, we need to style the surrounding div. We haven't done that. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna actually style this surrounding div, and all I have to say is I have to say relative. It needs to be relative, and the max height I'm gonna allocate it a max height of 72, and I'm also gonna say flex of 1. So take as much space as you want to, because the overall link container is actually it's actually flex, right? So we want to allow our image to take as much space as it needs to. And now it's beautiful. Look at that, guys. It's looking beautiful right now. And if I refresh this page right now, look what happens, guys. This nice loading. Now, how did I actually style this? It's completely really simple. What I basically did is every time this loading happens, inside of my class name, what I did is I did scale the image by like 110 and give me a blur of 2XL. And you can control the amount of blur here. I did 2XL. You could go like crazy with this. You can say 3XL. So increase the blur. Right now the blur is more, there's more blur here. I just did it to 2XL, and I also grayscale the image, by the way. So I remove the grayscale, we can see nothing's happening. So we need to make sure we are grayscaling the image, right? It's really important. So we are grayscaling the image as well, and now it's beautifully rendering, and it's only happening when the loading is true. So as soon as the loading actually becomes false, the scale becomes normal again. There's a blur of 0 and a grayscale of 0. And all of this is happening with a beautiful transition value of duration 700. So it's not snappy. It's happening with a beautiful, nice transition, which is really, really nice, right? And the same goes for the other image component. The only difference between these two is the fill property. That's the only difference. But make sure we are using use client here. Otherwise, it's not going to work since we are using use state here. So that's our dynamic product image component, which is done. And of course, this all looks off here because in our main website, we have this nice grid, right? And it's completely responsive, by the way. So if I go on a smaller screen, we see it reduces down to 3, then it reduces down to 2. And then if you go back, it reduces down to really nice looking 1 per basically column. It's a single column, right? It looks really clean now. So the way we can do this is, of course, I'm going to be using CSS grid here to position this in this kind of way. Right now, it's all flex column. So, of course, it's taking as much space as possible. So let's go and actually do that, right? So we have our nice product. I'm going to go inside of the page. So let me just navigate to my page. And there's a bunch of things we want to do here. First of all, we want to style our main tag, which we haven't styled. So for our main tag, I'm just going to say min height of screen. I'm going to close the sidebar just so you can see better visibility. And I'm going to give it a max width of 7 XLs. And I'm also going to say MX auto to make sure it comes in the center. It's going to come in really nicely. And I'm going to give a PX of 8. And by the way, whenever we are using Tailwind, I want to mention this. Whenever we are using like Tailwind, every time we're writing styles, we're writing mobile first styles. So what I actually mean is we are writing first for the styles first for the mobile, and then we basically incrementally like go up to like the bigger screens. So then we go up to like screens like like tablet, and then we can go up to desktops. So phones, tablets, desktops, it goes in this order. So it goes from mobile first approach, right? It goes from min to max like that. Whereas when we are normally developing websites, it's kind of like we are developing first for the desktop, which is, it's fine, but it's really not really a good practice because you want the first thing you should be thinking is your user should be on the phone, right? Everyone uses everything on the phone nowadays. So you should be developing first for the phone and then going your way upwards, right? So on Tailwind, we are actually developing first for the phone. So what I'm gonna be doing here is this padding, which we have 32 pixels, is for the phone. And then I'm gonna say Excel, and this is how you define breakpoints inside of like Tailwind. And they have some default nice breakpoints, which you shouldn't change, by the way. They have really nice default breakpoints. So Excel is actually on min width of 1280 pixels. Think of it as like desktop. So on a desktop, we don't want any sort of padding, but we want padding on a phone screen. And we also want some margin from top, which is going to be of 192 pixels. And I want to save this, go back, and let's see. There we go. Right now, it's looking a bit better, but again, this shouldn't be taking the full column. That's not looking good. But of course, it's having a constraint now. So we can see because of giving some max width of 7XL and MX Auto, it made sure it's taking the maximum width of 1280 pixels, and it's in the center as well. So this is a really nice constraint. So even if I go like huge right now, we can see it's always in the center. It's never gonna become that huge. So now let's go on to the container of products or map. That's the container we want to work on. So on this div, basically, there's this div, and this is where we want to assign our grid, CSS grid. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to say grid, and then I'm going to give by default, I want this to be grid columns one. And I just wanted to mention something that without using Tailwind, I never used grid. Like I hated CSS grid so much that I always like tend towards like using Flexbox. But like after literally using Tailwind, grid is so easy to use. Like we could literally see, I don't have to write this ugly line like like who wants to write this ugly line, right? Like repeat one min max. You don't want to even remember this, right? All you want is you want to know how many columns you want every single in every single row. So of course, you want to have grid columns of one. This basically means you start with one columns on a phone device, right? And then also you want to have gap y of 10. So gap y is vertical spacing between your components. And then you also want to have gap x, again, that's horizontal spacing. And on a smaller screen now, I want this grid columns to be 2. Remember, it's mobile first. So we start with phone with one column, then a smaller screen, which is 640 pixels. We want it to be 2. And then we go on a larger screen. Now you guys might have guessed it, grid columns of 3. And on an Excel screen, grid columns of 4, right? And on an Excel screen, we also want the gap X to be a bit more. So we want to increase the gap X by 8. And let's save this. And now let's go back to our website. Just like that, guys. Just with these bunch of this, like literally this utility classes, we changed our whole like layout. And look how it's looking. It's looking beautiful now, right? And it's completely responsive. So because we started with our phone, we can actually literally see we started with one column, then we went all the way with 2 columns on a smaller screen. This is the medium screen. This is the large screen, right? Just look how it's looking. Really, really nice, and it's so easy to use CSS grid in with Tailwind CSS. So that's done. I think our main section is also done. So now I think it's time to actually move on to the cooler part, which is going to be it's going to be the intersection part of Next.js 13.3, which is what we wanted to learn, right? So root intersection stuff. So we can actually move on to that because we have our product and our product components is complete. We have our main section. This is also complete. And by the way, we also have one more page to build. So whenever I click on any of these products, by the way, we see this product page is not found. So let's actually build this page first, so it all makes sense, right? So what we're gonna do is the next thing I'm going to be creating this dynamic page. Now, how can we create this dynamic page? It's very easy. Same way, inside of our app directory, make sure you're in the app directory. We have a product. We basically are going to be creating a folder here. And this folder, again, is going to be of product. And of course, we already had this before. But here, we don't need this page.tsx, right? Because this represents the slash product page. Now we need to create a dynamic page. So we need to go one upper level, right? So what I'm gonna do is inside of our product, we're gonna remove this page since we don't need that. Inside of our product, I'm gonna create another folder. And before in pages directory, we used to have like dynamic ID and we used to say .tsx, but I'm not gonna do this here because remember we have to follow this convention of using page.tsx every single time, right? We can't use ID.tsx, product.tsx because that was in the old way, right? In the old approach. Now we have to have like a page.tsx, a layout.tsx, and you have to do it in a nicer way. So what I'm going to do is I have this dynamic ID. Now inside of this dynamic ID, I'm going to create a file called page.tsx, the same way we did for our homepage, right? Now I'm going to say RFCE, and I'm going to just rename this to like a product page since this is going to represent a product page, right? So I'm going to rename this to product page and go to my dynamic page. And this is where we can actually build our product page, right? A nice looking product page. So what I'm going to be doing is, first of all, let's go back to our website. Let's see if this works, right? So if I refresh this, boom, we see our product page, right? One thing we actually missed in this build is I actually didn't build a header. So we built a beautiful section, but I actually forgot to build a header. So we can also quickly build a header first. So for the header, I'm just gonna quickly like copy paste the header styling. It's really straightforward. So I'm just gonna create like a header .tsx component rfce. Bam, here we go. And I'm just gonna copy paste some styles for the header. And it's gonna be really straightforward. So we have, first of all, I always like my nice semantics here. So I changed this diff to header, and because it's more semantically correct, right? It's good for SEO. So we want to have this as header, and I basically made this flex. I had a link here. So what this link basically does is actually takes you to the homepage back again. So if we go back to our finished build, we see whenever I click on any of these pages, and let's say if I refresh this, I go to this product page. Whenever I click this link, I go back to the homepage. So that's what happens with the link component here. And I had like fairly straightforward. I had just had two buttons and they had some classes. You could probably refactor this into a component as well instead of like repeating these classes. But it's like fairly straightforward. And I also had a custom class, by the way. So I had a button custom class here. And for this custom class, the way you add custom classes in Tailwind is you basically go into your global CSS and you basically use the add apply directive into your component. So I can navigate into global CSS. I can use the layer approach, and I could just say components. And inside of your components, you want to apply your custom class. So my custom class was dot button, and I can use the add apply directive. So basically, what I did is I refactored this much styles because this was the same styling for both the buttons. So what I actually did is instead of applying this whole thing here, I just basically said button, and I went into my global CSS and added this. Just makes it more usable, right? So this is the fairly straightforward. There's nothing super fancy going in the header. So this is our header, but where do we actually render this header? Remember, in the beginning of the build, I mentioned that there's something called a layout.tsx, which is another convention of like basically it's going to be there with every single page. So the layout.tsx exists in every single page. And this is something I forgot to mention as well. So for instance, let's say you have the product page and you have the home page. Let's say you want something to be there on your header to be there on the home page, but you don't want it to be there on the product page. So how can you solve that? It's really easy because you have two different layouts for both the different pages. So you can just render the header on the home page, and you can also have like there's so much stuff you could do with this new approach that you could also have something called like sections like user and dashboard, and you could literally read more about this in the documentation website. But it's really cool. You could have like two different sections like dashboard or a login section. Again, I don't want to like stray away from the main topics here, but there's so much stuff you could do with the new approach, and I might be releasing new videos for each of these features since this is really useful. But basically, coming back to the point is that we have our header here, and where do we actually render the header? Now we need to think about it, right? Our header is going to be there on every single page. So even if I click on this product, we have the header here, right? So it makes sense to have the header in your layout, right? So I'm going to go into the layout.tsx, and inside of my root layout, right? So this means this layout is for your home page, and all this is like your parent layout component. So it means everything included in here is going to be rendered on each of your pages, basically. So inside of my body, I'm just going to simply say header, and of course it's a component. So I'm just going to quickly get that and save it. Let's go back to our website. What's happening here is the host name. Because we're using a Next.js image component here, we can see this is the host name. Again, we need to whitelist inside of our next config. So I'm just gonna quickly whitelist this domain. And I just want to be like super safe. So I'm just gonna cut the server and restart because we are getting some errors before. So let's restart this. And just like that, guys, we have the beautiful header, and you could literally change the header however you wish. And it's sticky header as well, by the way. So if you go onto the header, we could literally see that the header is fixed and it's top 0, right? So this is the sticky portion of the header. So what I did is I made the header fixed because you want the header to be there whenever we scroll, right? We don't want it to like just be there on the top. And so I made it fixed and it's top 0, so it's looking more nice in that manner. So fairly straightforward. We have the header, so the header is done, that's out of the way. Now let's move on back to our product page. For our product page, so when I click it, we still see the header, by the way, right? So since it's in the layout, we still see this, so that's really nice. In our product page, what we want to do, there's a bunch of stuff you want to do here, right? First thing, we want to actually get the dynamic product for this particular product page, right? So whenever I click on any product, I want to get that product info on this page, right? So when I clicked on product 1, so like, let's say I clicked on product 11, I need the info for the product 11 here, right? How do we do this? It's very straightforward in the newer Next.js approach, is because this is a server component. Remember, whenever we have server components, we receive something called props here, right? We always used to receive these props. And if I actually console log without like worrying about the typings or anything, if I console log this, and remember, since this is a server component, the logs are going to be on the terminal here. I'm going to close the sidebar, and we can see in our terminal, you guys can literally see here, we have something called params, and inside of our params we have an ID of 11. Now this is really useful, right? Because let's say if I navigate to product 12, we literally will see ID of 12. So this, we literally get params in the server component way, because this is a server component. I didn't change this to a client, it's a server component, right? So this is really useful. Now what we can do is we can just literally say refactor this to props, and we can literally have type of props again. And what we can do is, because we can actually see how this is happening, is you can refactor this type props, and we could literally say params, and inside of our params you can see we have ID. And why is it ID? Is because we named our route like this. So for instance, if I change this to something called slug or something else, then it's gonna display that variable here instead of ID. It's displaying me ID because I named this ID here. That's why. So we have our params, and inside of params we have ID. We are not interested in search params right now, so I'm not gonna have typings for that, but you can have typings for that as well. So I'm gonna destructure this in the ES6 way. I'm gonna say params, and you can also go ahead and destructure this further by making putting a colon here, and then putting curly braces again, and you can see we have the ID here. So we're literally getting the ID by destructuring one level deeper here. And now if I console log, I can literally get the exact ID. Now this is what we need to fetch the dynamic product, because in the start of the video, when I was explaining all this API thing, it was very simple. All we needed to do, right, is we needed to pass in this ID of the product to actually get a single product here, right? So even if I showcase this again, we can literally see by just passing in 1, we get the single product here. So by just passing in something like 10, we get the 10th product here. So this is what we want to do in this manner now. So what we can do in this product page is we could literally, because again this is a server component, we could literally fetch stuff again, and we can change this function first of all to an asynchronous function because we want to fetch some stuff, right? Now, what I want to fetch is I want to have a response and I want to use await fetch and GitHub Copilot just literally give me the exact URL, right? This is the exact URL we want to be using. And we want to pass in the ID from the params right over here. And now we can get the single product by like returning back the JSON response. And of course, this we can see it's typed as any. We don't want any. We want our product to have a nice typing. So I'm just gonna type this. I'm just gonna put column product here to make sure it's typed as product because this is going to be getting back. We're gonna be receiving this as a single product, right? So then we're gonna get our nice typing. First thing in the div is remember we created this reusable product image component. It's gonna come in really handy, and you guys will literally see the use cases here. So we have our product. I'm just gonna simply pass in the product here, just the way we are receiving from here, and I'm just literally gonna save this, and we literally get the image for product 12. Now let's say we go to product 1. We should be able to see, yeah, here we go. It just has this nice loading as well. Let's say you go to product 20. I think there are 20 products. Boom, right? It's just really nice, right? We literally get the dynamic products now. So we are literally fetching and receiving the dynamic products. Now the next thing I want to do is I want to have a div here. Inside of this, I want to have another div. I want to have an H1 here, and this is going to be for the product.title. I'm just gonna style this title a bit. It's gonna have a text of 2XL. On a medium screen, it's gonna have text of 4XL, and the font is gonna be bold. I'm just gonna literally save this. We see this beautiful title rendering here. And we're gonna have an H2, and for the H2, we're gonna say product.price. You have to show the price, really, really important. And I'm just gonna say text of gray 500 for the price, and also font of bold and text XL. And lastly, we want to say text of 3XL on a medium screen, right? Again, save this, go back, and we can literally see this beautiful price here, right? And it's my, yeah, that's nice. And this is all dynamic. So if we go navigate to product 12, literally see this for product 12, right? Which is really, really cool. Of course, the image isn't styled in that way. So we want to make sure we style it in that manner as well, but that we're going to be doing in just a while. So after this div, we want to first of all also have some styling for this div. Is we want to have some spacing between the children, and we also want to have some padding from the button. Then outside of this div, we want to have another div. We want to have a p-tag here, and this is going to be for the product description. And we see these nice typings, right? It's happening because we have mapped it to the single product which we gave before. So like literally we just have to do things in a way where we just write it once and we can literally reuse them over and over again. The same goes to the product image component. It's so useful because we don't want to keep on rewriting this over and over again. And what happens in production code basis, probably this is what happens, right? Is reuse stuff as much as you can. For the class name here, I'm gonna say text extra small on a medium size, text small, and the overall container there is gonna have some padding. The reason I'm giving padding bottom and padding top here is because we're gonna have some nice divides in the parent div here. And this is again inside of Tailwind, you can give these nice dividers. These are like literally don't read this crap here. What this literally means, it's an HR between these. It's a horizontal row between these two division tag. That's all it is. It's a division Y. It's a really nice way to do this in Tailwind. If I go back now, we literally see this divide Y, right? So really looks really, really nice and easy. The next thing is we want to give overall styling for our overall container. So I'm just going to say a max width of 5XL, MX auto. We also want to say flex column. And on a medium screen size, we also want to say it turns back to flex row and item center. So what I'm doing is I'm starting with a max width of 5XL and MX Auto. On a phone screen, I want this to be on a column, but as soon as it reaches the medium screen size, I want these the flexbox to be in the direction of row. I want to say items center. I want to give a gap of 8, as well as a padding X of 4. Oops, padding X of 4, and a margin top of 48, a padding bottom of 10. And that's pretty much it. And let's save this and let's look at how we see. Just like that, guys. Look at how beautiful and elegant this looks, right? And if I actually go back to a phone screen now, look what happens, right? It goes in literally a flex column direction. Literally looks beautiful, right? And let's actually go back to our homepage. I click on the link here, and let's try to access this jacket right here. Here we go. We see this nice loading happening, and the beautiful loading and actually comes along with. Let's go to this send disk. I like these solid state drives. It's really, really nice, by the way. So we can see this. Wow, it looks really, really nice and clean, right? So let's stay on the product page and let's finish up the rest of the implementation. So we have text access here, and oh, okay, we actually are done with this parent div here. So we have max width, mx auto, flex column. We have all the styling we wanted to give her, so that's complete. Um, Next thing we want to do here is we want to protect ourselves. So let me show you guys something. So we have products up to 20, but what if someone tries to navigate on 21, right? What if I try to go? This is what we see, and this is ugly. Like, we don't want this to happen in production. Like, we don't want the user to see this on production, right? Unexpected. What does this mean, right? Instead, if I go to my finished build, I hope this is still working. So let's actually go back to product 21. And we literally see, so I actually did create the error thing here, but I think I forgot to position it, so we can't actually see the error, but it's on the page, trust me, guys. So if I go and actually show you guys, it is there. I'm pretty sure it's there on our page. Yeah, here we go. Like, this is literally the proof. Like, it's there. I've literally added an H2 right on the top, but I forgot to position it, so it's we can't see it, but I literally added these two things. Not found, could not find requested resource. I probably forgot to position it in a way so we can actually see it here, but we literally added this. So what this is basically doing, this is a protection layer, right? So if the user tries to go to a page which isn't there, right? It actually tries to load that page and it sees it didn't found any product, so it actually displays this. And it's fairly straightforward how you can do this with like literally server components. Is all I basically did is I basically converted this into a try catch block, right? This whole function. Remember, this function is an asynchronous function. So what I basically did is inside here, I just added a try catch statement, and I want to do all these things basically from all the way here to all the way till return. I want to get all this, and I want to paste this in here. For the error, however, what I basically did is there's something called not found inside of Next.js now, which you can import from next/navigation. So what I did is I imported this not found function from next/navigation. We can see when used in a React server component, this will set the status code to 404. It basically means the requested resource isn't found. That's what 404 means. When used in a custom app root, it will send a 404 status. Really, really useful. So what I have actually done here is I've used the try catch block for the protection here, and I have said that whenever whenever we have this thing and we try to search for a product which isn't found, we see a 404 page here now. Now, I don't want to show just the 404 page, but I also want to change the UI. How do we actually do that? Very straightforward. Just like we had this not found function, we have another convention inside of this newer Next.js phase, how we can basically handle different not found errors. So we have a route, whatever you want to say, we can create inside of the same directory where we have this page.tsx, and it needs to follow this convention called not found.tsx. And remember, we have to write it like this. The reason why is if we actually go back to Next.js documentation, we could literally see this route, what it actually does. So we go to not found, we have this one. So this is what I'm talking about. So we can create this not found.tsx route, which is gonna display basically what I was displaying before. And this is really useful, right? Because it's gonna display that useful information to the user. So what I'm gonna do here is I'm just gonna get my root here, copy and paste this in here, not found. And now let's actually save and refresh this. And we literally literally see the new one, the new not found page. But what's happening is technically, again, the things I need to fix is I need to have let's actually change this to a div. And what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna give some margin from top, so we actually get to see this. And now here we go. We get to see. I didn't style this actually, but you can go ahead and I literally style this up however you want. This is basically your not found the TSX error page. Really, really useful for handling situations like this. So if you go to like page number 20, since we have that page, it loads super fast. But if you go to something like this, which doesn't exist, not found, could not find requested resource. Really, really, really nice, right? So really easy. And the really good thing about this new approach is the separation between your things, right? So I'm not cluttering my error thing. So I could have, in the old approach, I could have like probably done something like return, and I could have returned another div, and I could have, it's a hassle, right? But right now we're just basically sending this function, and because we are actually doing not found here, it redirects to a not found, it checks if there's a not found.tsx file in the same directory. It checks for that file. And if there's a file that exists like that, it actually redirects to that file, which is really useful, right? In situations like this. So I really, really love the newer approach, and it's really, really nice the separations we have done here. And this is literally just a try catch block. Simple. So we are now protecting ourselves. Now, I think we have also built our nice product page, and now is the time for building our nice root and interception stuff, which is going to be a bit a bit more crazy, but it's gonna come in really, really handy. So now, what I'm gonna do is I am going to be creating that root and interception. Let's actually learn that, how to do that. So I for that actually purpose, I actually want to open that link as well. I've had that open, but I'm just gonna search for it again. Intercepting routes. So this is the link, and we have this convention. We can see it can be defined with bracket dot convention. I'm gonna be making this super easy for you guys to. Once you read the document, it's kind of like overwhelming on how to do this. But it's kind of really simple once you get the hang of this, right? So all you basically do is the page you want to display, you want to intercept. So any page you want to intercept, it needs to follow the same segment here. So it needs to, let's say I want to intercept this photo page, right? I want to have the same segment here. So I want to have to display bracket dot photo ID page dot this. So that's how you can intercept the route. And it actually, you can read more about it. It actually allows you to load a route within the current layout while keeping the context for the current page. It's really, really useful, right? Because you can intercept certain routes to show a different route. And then only once you refresh the page, actually redirects to a route. If you go outside of the page, like I was doing here on the finished build, if I actually show you guys a demo, for some reason, again, it's bugging out. I don't think it should happen on the newer version, but we see if I click outside here, it actually goes back to the home page. Only once I refresh this, it actually takes me to this page. Really, really useful. So let's get started with this. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to be creating dot product. And remember, the page we want to intercept, it has to follow the same segment, right? So what I'm going to do is on my root level here, I'm going to create a new folder, and it needs to be, and take your time with this, because if you mess this thing up, and trust me, I messed this up before, and I was literally trying to find the error for an hour, and it was just how I messed this up was I actually added this bracket on the end here. This is how I messed this up, and I was literally trying to find the error, and it was like, oh my god, what did I do? But this is how you should do it. So you should have dot brackets surrounding that, and then the product. And the next thing you want to basically do is you want to have the same, remember, the same segment. So again, I'm going to create a new, and this is really cool because it's dynamic as well, right? So I'm going to create dynamic ID because we're going to be intercepting these routes. We're going to be intercepting these routes. So when I click here, these are the routes we're going to be intercepting. So I'm going to create a dynamic ID. Inside of this ID, I'm going to create a page.tsx. And this will be our intercepting route, right? Now this will be like really useful. This is something we have to build, and this will be our beautiful modal, by the way. So this will be the modal which we will be building. So this will be this super useful. So I click here. This will be this beautiful modal which we have, and I'm using headless UI for this particular modal. I really like headless UI. It's really, really nice for different models and stuff. So I am going to be going to headless UI, and we need to be installing this first of all. So To install this, we just want to copy this command, go back, and I'm just going to open like a second terminal on top of my first terminal and just paste it in and install headless UI/React. And the component we're going to be using in headless UI, we're going to be using this dialog modal, which is really, really nice. It adds the nice backdrop in the background as well. So it blurs, it actually darkens that, so we completely focus on the modal. I really like headless UI, have really nice subtle components. So here we go. We have our headless UI, close the terminal. And I'm going to do a bunch of imports here. So I'm just going to copy these imports. So I have these bunch of imports. We are also going to be using hero icons. So to install, again, hero icons, we can literally navigate to hero icons. Very straightforward to use it. You can click on the documentation and you can literally copy this command again to install hero icons. Again, if you don't want to use hero icons, you can literally use any other icon pack. Doesn't matter. You can use React icons, Phosphor icons. There's a bunch of icon packages you could use. I like to use hero icons. They play in really nice with Tailwind, and really look really nice as well. So literally, I always use hero icons. So hero icons, and we have our headless UI. So I did these bunch of imports, and this modal, by the way, is going to be a client component as well. The reason why is because we're going to be using states here. That's why it needs to be a client component. And of course, I forgot to do RFCE here, and I'm not going to import React here. I'm going to change this to our function modal, and we have our modal.tsx here, which looks really nice. Now, inside of our modal, I'm just going to copy a lot of the things from headless UI. So let's just go back to headless UI. And they give you this use state. So I'm going to create my own use state functions. But actually, I'm just going to copy this. So we get to see what is happening. So we have is open, set is open. This is just a use state function, use state for basically opening and handling the modal, right? And what I'm going to do is I'm going to get the one with the backdrop. They have a really nice one where they have a nice little backdrop. And this is the one I use pretty much. So they have this backdrop, which is really, really nice. So what I do is I kind of copy this whole dialog and I return this inside of here. And if we actually save this by default right now, and we go back to our app and we see basically what happens is if we actually try to click on any link right now, let's go back, refresh our app. Nothing's pretty much happening right now. This means that this isn't working at the moment. Let me check one more thing as well. So we have our prefetch to false here. It makes sense. So let's go back to our app and let's see if this we should be able to see the model, to be honest, since we added the page.tsx here. I might be missing something though, since it isn't working. So I might be missing something. However, so we do have the layout set up. We do have the page set up. So we have this stuff. We have the page. We have the layout. This should be probably working for some reason. Let's go back. Let's actually refresh. Let me just refresh the server as well. Let's refresh the server as well. And let's see if this actually works. So yeah, live, it's not live, but yeah, I'm gonna debug here and let's try to figure this out. What's technically happening? Oh, we see. So it's actually telling us that we have an invalid interception route. Cannot use dot dot marker at the youth level. We have to use dot instead. This is really good, right? Actually gave you the error as well. So we cannot use dot dot marker. Instead, we have to use a single one. So what I made a mistake is because it's at the root level, so we can't use dot dot. Instead, we have to use dot. And if I change this back to dot, I think now our app should be running back again. Let's refresh this. And let's see if this actually works now. Let's see if I click on this. There we go, guys. This is really cool, right? We just fixed the error. This is how like you fix error, right? I mean, just look at your terminal, and this is really good, by the way. Like, if they didn't actually tell me this, I would like have gone ages, and I would have had to search the documentation for this. because it wasn't mentioned in the documentation in the beginning when I was reading the docs. It was really, really cool. They actually give you this error. Yeah. But we get this nice product. And if I refresh, we are redirected to the product. I know it isn't complete, but this is working exactly the way we want to. So let's say if we go click on here, and now we see there's no errors anymore. The errors we see on this production one, the one which we deployed, they were happening because it was built with an older version, but we don't see any errors on the newer version, however. So it's really, really nice and really clean, right? Even if I click on, let's say this one, we see this is really, really nice. So yeah, this is really cool. So let's keep on building this. And even if I refresh this, actually takes me to the product tree page. Really useful. Yeah, let's keep on building this. So we have quite a lot to build in this on this page. So at this level, so here we go. So now at this level, what we can do is we start building our dialog.panel. So everything inside this model actually goes inside of your dialog.panel. That's like the main sort of area. First of all, I'm going to change a bunch of styles for my dialog.panel. So I'm just going to remove a bunch of styles here. I'm going to paste my own. This has going to have a background of white, a padding of 10. And remember, we had some use states here. So we're going to create some use states and stuff in a while. But first, we're going to have a div. And we are also going to have a product here. Now, how do we actually get the product here? Remember, we have, so whenever we have intercepting routes, when I click on any of these routes, we see the route changing here in the URL, right? This is really useful, right? Because what this actually means is we are getting this ID from the params, right? And the way we can get the ID from the params in a client-side comp, because remember, this is a client-side component, is we can use something called use params, which I'm actually importing from Next Navigation, and I can literally get my ID by saying use params.id. And the reason I have to say .id here is because if you actually console log use params, and I'm just gonna rename this to params so I can show you all. And if I, let's say, if I console log my params, let's actually go here and I'm gonna open up my console. We have this object right here. And inside of this object, we see there's a string of ID. The reason this is ID again is because we named our page ID. So that's why we get this ID. So this basically means we can literally get the ID from this nice use params hook, right? And then literally get the ID. Now we can do some really cool stuff. And what I'm basically doing is I'm using a use effect to fetch this product, right? On the client side. So I've actually showed two ways of fetching the product. One, we are fetching the product on the server side inside of our page here. So if I go back to my page, there was this product page where we had our try catch block. So this is like the fetching on the server, right? Now I'm gonna fetch this on the client. Really, really useful stuff, right? So I can have my use effects there because this is a client component, right? And what I can do is every time the ID changes, I want to fetch the product. So this is like a dependency array inside of a use effect. If you're not familiar with how a use effect works, try to like watch a video on it and try to like go back. There's a bunch of videos on use effects. But basically, how it works is inside of a use effect, you have this dependency area. So anytime this ID changes, the use effect, anything we have inside the use effect actually fetches again. And what we're going to be having is we're going to be having an asynchronous function. So I'm going to have a synchronous function, and it's going to say fetch. Fetch product. So it's going to say fetch product, and it's going to be an asynchronous function. And the way we're going to be fetching this product is we're going to be having a response. And so I haven't created a local API route in this build. I'm just using the one we were using before. But you can also go ahead and refactor and use the new API. Like they have a new way to actually use API inside of your app directory. That's really cool as well. So now we can use this ID and send in this ID, dynamic ID, to get that single product, right? And now we can literally have this single product. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to have a piece of state to keep track of my product, right? So I'm going to say product and set product. By default, it's going to be empty, and the set product is going to have the typings of product. So it's going to be mapped to a product like this. right? And what I'm gonna do is here, I'm gonna assign this product to the product which we are fetching back. Of course, this means that it's gonna be assigned to this nice little product or undefined. And the next thing I'm gonna do is I'm also gonna have a loading in a while, but for now I'll just do this like this, and then I'll demonstrate how we can also have a loading. But anytime we have a function inside of a use effect, we have to make sure to actually run the function, because right now the function isn't running. So you have to run the function like this, and anytime my ID changes now, the use effect will run, and it will basically fetch the product. So now if I actually console log my product, we will be able to see a single product here, and we'll be able to see our product number one. Let's say if I go to product 10, now it's gonna fetch sorry, not like this. So I'm gonna click on product, and so of course but to use intercept routes you have to click on the link and use it. We can't just navigate to a route and use intercepting route right like this, right? But it's not for that use case. It's best for a use case like this, where we click on a modal and we see this modal pop up and the route changing, but actually it's an intercepting route, right? So we see this nice object, and this is exactly for with ID 19 where we actually see this product. So it's actually fetching this product, right? Which is really, really good. You can remove the console log now, and now we can actually start working and this on displaying our product in the modal, right? First thing in the panel, what I'm gonna do is we're gonna have a div, and again I'm gonna reuse that product image component we have, and we need to remember we need to send in a product here. So I'm gonna again do the same thing, send in my product, and I'm also gonna say fill here, and there's some error. It's saying that product or undefined is not assignable to product. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do something really clever. So it could be undefined, right? So I can do something called what I can do is I can say if the product dot image, because this is for the image, right? If the product dot image exists, then only I want to display this. And now we don't see this error anymore, because now we're checking that if the image exists, then only we want to render the product image component, right? And because we have a fill here, remember we need to provide a container div, which we already did here, but we need to provide some classes here. Actually, we didn't, so it needs to be here. My bad. It needs to be right here. And this container needs to have some classes. It needs to be relative. It needs to be having a width of 72, a height of full. Oh, what the hell did I do? Height of full. And then it needs to be hidden, and only on a medium screen we want to be showing this product image. So actually save this, and let's see if we see anything. We should be able to see the imager, right? We aren't able to see our product image. We should be able to see if you're fetching the right image. Should be able to see the image. For the overall container, I'm just gonna say flex, and I'm also gonna say gap x of 8 and a height of 96. So if I give it a height, let's see if this works. Yeah, I just had to give static for the overall container. Now we see our beautiful image. I'm just gonna close the console, but we still need to keep on working with this stuff, right? So we have our nice image in there. The next thing we want to work on is another div here. Which is going to have another div, and it's going to have a h4 tag. And this is going to be for, again, some product info. We're going to have some product. And again, the TypeScript is automatically putting this question mark, because if I don't do that, we see that it could be undefined, right? So we are putting optional, it's called optional chaining, to see if it exists or no, right? Really useful to use TypeScript in these situations, right? So for on semi-bold, we see our heading. I'm gonna have some product price. And again, we need to make sure we have a dollar symbol. For the styling, I'm just gonna say font medium, and text is going to be of small. Next thing we want to do is inside of the same div, we want to have another div, which is gonna have a p tag, and this is going to be for rating. Now I have also done displayed rating in a really nice way. I'm just going to grab this from my finished build, but it's very straightforward the way I've actually done this. I'm gonna explain this as well. So inside of my div here, just over here, I have the p tag here, and there's something missing here. I think I messed something up. All right, I think I missed okay, I missed the whole thing here. Thing. All right. So I think I missed this thing. So I'm just gonna quickly copy this stuff, And for the p tag, I'm just going to have a rating dot rate here. And I'm going to explain this bunch of code, so don't get overwhelmed by what I am actually doing here. But first, let's actually see we have this nice rating component. So what I'm basically doing is I'm first of all checking if my rating.rate actually exists. If it does exist, then what I'm doing is I am using array.from. What basically this does is actually creates an array from an object. So what I'm doing is I'm creating an array and it basically accepts a param of length. And what I'm doing is I'm just passing in the math.floor. So I'm passing in the floor, the lower value of the rate one. So for instance, if it's 3.4, it's going to take 3 instead of 4. It's gonna take 3. If it's 3.6, it's still gonna take 3, right? So that's what it's gonna do actually. So I should have mentioned this in the comments, but this is what it's gonna do here. And the rest of the stars, it's gonna display a star icon outline, which is a different icon. And here I'm actually subtracting this. So what I'm doing is I'm saying 5 minus math.floor. So previously I took math.floor, so now I'm subtracting that and taking that length and creating an array of that many stars, basically. What this basically do is always creates a star of 5 length, basically 5 stars. So you can see 3, 4, 5, but the rating is gonna say 4. And I know it should be technically it should also fill the fifth star half because it's like 4.5. But I've just for this particular tutorial I've just done it like this. You can go ahead and refactor this further. But this is what it actually does for this build, right? The next thing we have is we have like a see all reviews button outside of this div here. So I'm just gonna paste this in here and let's see how it looks. We see all 146 reviews. The styling is kind of messed up. It's because you haven't styled the container div here. So for this container div, I'm just gonna say flex. Items need to be vertically aligned. Text has to be small. Margin Y needs to be 4. So I'm just gonna save this in, and now it should be in a nice sort of way. There we go. We see this nice, beautiful pricing, heading, and the rating here, right? Works really nicely. Next thing we want to do is we also, so I think we have margin lefts here and margin rights here, but they aren't actually applying onto this. But that's fine. I think I wanted to keep it like this. But what I'm trying to see is why is my margins and trying to, uh, yeah, that's because I have done it on the wrong place. Ah, my bad, guys. It needs to be outside of this, and it needs to be here. That's why we couldn't see the spacing. Yeah, here we go. Now we can see this beautiful spacing between this as well. Next thing we want to do is we want to have our description, which is again, it's going to be outside of this div tag, and it's going to be right over here. I'm giving a line clamp of 5 here and some text so small. So let's actually check this out. Now we see there's a problem happening with our image. The image isn't taking the full space. So we want to fix that as well. So let's go back to our image component. I hope I haven't messed this up. Yeah, that's happening. It's because the reason this is happening is because we haven't given flex one here. So what I'm gonna do is here, I'm just gonna say flex one, and I'm also gonna say flex and flex column. And for the containing div, I'm also gonna say flex one. So take as much space as you want to. This is what flex one does. I'm just gonna save it, and now we can see literally just by saying flex and flex column, we see our image in place now. Really nice. This is working really nicely. We have all the styles in place, but we have to still have the two buttons, which actually tells us to navigate to this page. Just like in the finished build, we had the two buttons. And we also want to have a nice loading animation, right? Which happens. It's a really cool animation. When I click on view full details, it actually takes me to this page. So this is also something we want to do. So now let's actually work on the two buttons. So what I'm gonna do is inside of my panel, of course, but outside of this div, I'm gonna have another div, and I'm just gonna have two buttons there. Actually, I'm just gonna copy this honestly because it's very straightforward. I'm just gonna explain this portion quickly of what I'm done here. So I'm using a router here. So again, router you want to make sure you get from next/navigation and not next/router. So that's something you want to take care of. So I'm just gonna say const router is equal to use router because this is the new one, the next/navigation. So you want to make sure you take care of that. And they have a bunch of other params, like you might have never heard of use param. So that's like a new one. I figured this out. It's really cool for fetching of params, but this only works on client side. So you can't use params, or you can't use these hooks on the server side. So you have to make sure you are using them on the client side. They have other ones as well, like use path name, use search params, some really cool ones. So we have a router, and I'm basically what I'm actually doing is I have a div, a container div, and I have two buttons. Again, I'm using my custom button class here to style these buttons. And for the second button, I'm basically routing this to the product slash product.id page. And I could have turned this into a link as well. That could have worked as well, but since I was having two buttons, I didn't like found the need to convert this into a link. I just added the router, and I just wanted to show it this way as well, how you can do it with the router approach. But yeah, literally, you want to take care of one thing that it could be undefined, so you want an optional chain here. And now, if we see these nice buttons, if I click here, it should technically take me to this page, which it didn't. So that's not good. Let's refresh this as well. Yeah, so once I refresh, I actually do go to that page. So let me click here again. Let's view full details. Okay, so it's not actually taking me to that page. All right, so when I click on view full details, it's not actually taking me, which it should be, because I'm pushing to a different page, but it's not actually taking me to the new route. So that's something which is in working. I'm just gonna do something, as I'm actually gonna turn the prefetch to false again, to true again, sorry. And let's try to use this again. Since this, if this is working with the newer version, then this should be working. Okay, that's nice. Okay, so still it's working with the prefetch to true with the newer version, and we don't actually see any errors. So I'm just gonna keep my console open. So if we see any errors, that's really nice. If I click on view full details, it's just not routing me to the correct page there. So that's the thing which is happening. And if I click outside, we also see we're not actually directed back to our localhost 3000. What technically should happen is it should redirect us back to the localhost 3000 when I click outside of this. And when I click here, it should also technically take me to the view full details page. So first of all, we don't need the prefetch false anymore. So that's really nice. And that's something we don't need because we don't see any errors. What if I try to convert this into a link? Or maybe there's some params we see here. So we have force optimistic navigation. So we don't want to mess with this. So I just want to convert this. Let's try to see if a link actually works here. So again, I haven't read full documentation on this. I'm really not entirely sure because they keep changing a lot of stuff. So let's get this button and let's see. So instead of even the button, like we want to disable this, and I just want to see if we can go to this exact same route inside of this. So let's see if the link approach works here. So if we click on the link, it still doesn't work, right? So that means we have done something incorrectly. So because how it should work is typically it should actually, when we click on view full details, it should technically route us to the view full details page, which isn't doing. But when I refresh, however, I do go on to the page, which is nice. However, it's not working with a link, right? So let's try to navigate to a different page. Let's try to go back to a home page. So that does work actually. So going back to a home page does work. It just doesn't work when I want to route to that exact page. So that doesn't work. That's completely fine. So that has nothing to do with the link because it doesn't work with the button and the link both. So that just makes sense that it has nothing to do with that. However, how do we fix this now? So the way we actually fix this is we go to the documentation, actually read about intercepting routes, right? So we want to see the one dot we use is used to match segments on the same level, and when we use double dots, it's used to match segments one level above. And when we use something like this twice, it's used to match segments two levels above. And this is used to match segments from the root app directory. So we want to basically match segments. So we want to see where do we want to match segments here. I think we want to match segments one level on the same level actually, because we see this product actually exists on the same level, right? So this makes sense because this product ID page.css exists on the same level. So it needs to stay here. But why this isn't working is I'm not sure why is the link not working there. So we still need to see if we want to add something here. So we still need to see if we are missing something. Let's keep seeing this if we miss something. All right, we have parallel routes. So technically we have something called slots which we could create, but we didn't need slots here since it's at the same level. And I didn't want to super complicated with slots and stuff, but we could probably have slots, and that could potentially work as well. The only thing I'm confused is how could we use with a URL? So why can't we actually link it to the same exact page? Is that not doable? Because that's something I really want to achieve. And we can't actually seem to find a solution for this, right? View full details. So what if we try to like force optimistic navigation? I'm just gonna try to see something if this is set to true. I think it's a Boolean value. So if this is set to true, what happens there? It still doesn't work, however. I should have checked it with link prefetch to false as well, but I think it's not gonna work since I think it's on the same root level, so it's not working. But the interesting thing is when I refresh the page, it actually removes the modal. So it's really like interesting in that sense. So that's really interesting, and we can literally see that this is like a. So we need to figure this out, right? So we need to figure why it's not working when I um, try to route through it. The good thing is when I even when I click on the outside of this, actually not working. I think it's probably because we changed this to a single a level. But if we do it up a level like this, the problem is that it's not on the correct level anymore. And we can see it's invalid interception route. It cannot use marker at the root level, but instead it needs to use dot instead. So if I click here, it's not actually working anymore, and you can literally see we getting this error. So what I'm gonna do is I'm trying to create. I'll try to create a slot here, and let's see if this actually works. So I'm just gonna say a product, and I'm actually going to put this inside. Sorry. So I'm gonna actually select my product first, and I'm gonna put this product inside of the slot, and let's see if this works now. So I'm just gonna clean the thing. I think it's still at the root level because we haven't actually changed anything. If I click here, it cannot use marker at the root level. It's still the same thing. This is why it's I don't know why we can't link it because before we were able to link this, so that's a bit confusing. So the slot isn't helping here. So I could just remove it. This is so by the way, whenever we use something called add here, so this just basically means it's a slot. And we have something called slots in here. So we see we have different bunch of slots. But it's at the same level, so it needs to be one level down. It just needs to be one level down. the only thing which isn't working is that the modal is not intercepting in the right way, or which is a bit confusing because I'm not sure what really is happening here. It might be happening due to use line. So what I'm gonna actually quickly do is I'm just gonna quickly say RFCE, and instead of like so what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna close this in, and I'm not gonna have, just gonna say modal here, and let's just have it as a server component. Let's see if this actually works with a server component. So let's try to refresh this, open on terminal back again. Oh, we need to change this thing to a single one, by the way, for this to work, since it's at the same level. So let's refresh this, and if I click here, so yeah, if I actually click here, the thing is what I want to figure out is if it works with the modal. So what I'm gonna do is I'm actually gonna get this exact same thing, and I'm just gonna get this thing, and I am still going to have all the imports uncommented out. So we just get these imports, and also I think I'm just gonna get this all this stuff here. So I'm just going to, and this is like debugging, right? This is how you can debug stuff, right? So this is how I debug stuff, right? So we can go back. Let's see. Yeah, we can't use state. That's something we can't actually use here. So I think we can't even use, to be fairly honest, we can't even use like a modal here, because we can't do it in a server way. We can't use that. So that's something we can't actually do. But what we can do is we can actually search for this, how to link intercepting route, route to the page Next.js. The only thing is, which I'm very confused about, is actually the link, how we could actually have a link here. So we can see we can't have links here. We can see intercepting routes can be used together with parallel routes to create models. We can use this pattern to create models using this pattern, or some common challenges. I just don't see the reason to do this because it was working with the old approach. So why isn't it working right now? The path to the photo segment can use the dot dot matcher, since add modal is a slot and not a segment. And this means that the photo root is only one segment level higher. One segment level higher, all right, despite being two file system levels higher. Other examples include opening a login modal in the top now while also having a dedicated login page, or opening a shopping cart in a site modal. We could probably use a slot here, and we could just probably say something like, so again, we could just use a slot. The only thing is I don't see any reason to use a slot, is because it wasn't there in the docs before when I actually built this. So if we try to use this now, and let's see, first of all, we need to remove all this stuff. The way I like to debug is I like to comment all the stuff before, and then I like to basically uncomment it later on if I ever want to use this. I can uncomment this again, and we could go back, and we could literally so now okay, now it's not actually displaying the model anymore. So if I click here again, okay, so now what's happening is I can't see the model. I can't the root is changing, but as soon as I refresh I can see, but I can't actually literally see the model in my, so I can't literally see the model. So even if I try to have something else, maybe I mean, I should be technically able to see the modal, but I'm not able to see the modal. So let's see if you're missing something else as well. So we see there's like a at modal thing which we could use. And what we can do here is we can have dot photo. Only thing I'm confused there is that if it needs to be dot dot because it's inside of the feed, so it needs to be dot dot. For our case, it doesn't have to be dot dot. It has to be dot because it's not containing inside of any, so it's at the same level. But I have had this at product thing. So what do we actually do with this thing? This is what I'm confused about. So what do we actually do with this thing? Does this actually work in that same manner? Yeah. So what I'm confused about if it's actually is it like the naming probably? If I change this to the like a modal or something. Um yeah, it's actually super confusing because let's actually try to click on each of this and there's an error that happens. All right, that's fine. At least we see some sort of error. So let's actually refresh the server as well. And there's an error we actually get. So we don't see any sort of errors compiling at modal. I mean, I'm not really a fond of these slots actually, because it doesn't make quite a lot of sense, honestly. So I'm just gonna safely remove this modal actually, because it doesn't quite make a lot of sense to me. Now, if I actually click here, thing is we can't actually see add a link to the intercepting route in Next.js. I think I can just type in GitHub because there might be someone who might be asking about the same thing here. We could also try to use this in the manner where we can say dot dot dot, although I'm not really sure if this is a good approach. So if I click on any of these routes, I do get my modal, but and then when I refresh, I do get to that page as well. However, it's still the same problem. It's still the same problem of not routing me back to the page. Let me just refresh the server over again. Let's see. If we refresh this again, let's go back. See, if we can get any errors here. Click outside. Yeah, still the same. Am I missing some stuff here inside of my application? So am I missing some stuff here? Something I forgot to add? I'm just trying to see. Oh, I might have missed something. Oh God, I'm so stupid. I missed something really crucial. So it was whenever we close the modal, the reason we aren't actually going back is because I actually forgot to add something. So whenever I click on the close the modal button, we had to add something else here on the close time. And that's why it was probably not working because we had set is open to false. We also had router.back because you also want to navigate to the previous entry, right? We also want to do that. So we had set is open to false, but we also had the router.back um, router.back button. Nice. So now we can see we can go back to our localhost page. That's really nice. We still want to fix our view full details. So this was what I'm stupid I was doing. Yeah. And the reason it's kind of very snappy right now is we see this is because we don't have a loading state, which I'm gonna add in just a while, and it's gonna be really smooth then. It's because remember we are fetching this on the client, right? So there's some loading state to this. But this is actually working. This is nice. All I want to do, I want to fix this view full details thing. Hey guys, I just fixed the error. And the error was actually we need to replace the router dot push which we were using before with the window dot location dot reload thing. It's a quick hack to actually reload the page because before when we were trying to push this to using the router object, that doesn't work is because it's actually the same URL if we look at it. And in the intercepting, when we are intercepting this route, actually, what happens is this: it's actually masked with the same URL. It does not work currently, but Next.js might add the support for this. They might add this later on, but right now it doesn't work. So instead, what we can do is we can just say window.location.reload, and of course, we try to check this with router as well. We could use router.refresh, but this doesn't work either. So if I try to use this, for instance, if I click view full details, we see it's not working. So the way we can actually fix this is we can use the window object. And the reason we can use the window object is because this is a client side component, right? So we could just simply use the window object and we could say dot location and dot reload, which is going to reload the current page. And now if you actually take a look at this, we actually redirect to that page, right? Which is really, really nice, which is what we wanted. So both of our things are actually working. So if I click outside the modal, we go back to our home page. But as soon as I click on view full details, it actually takes us to the current page which you are on. And of course, if you refresh the intercepting route, it also takes you to that exact page. So we managed to go past this error. The only thing which I don't like in this thing here, when I click on view full details, it reloads the page, which is something, it's a caveat, I would say. So the only caveat is that we have to reload the page in order to actually go to that page. But that's the only caveat so far. Uh, that's the thing for the model. However, we still see that this is really snappy, right? We see that the image isn't like there's a dollar symbol and then the image is loading in. So we want to add some nice loading now. And the way we can actually add this is actually really easy. We're just going to have a piece of loading state. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to our build, close the sidebar, and inside of our intercepting route, what I'm going to do, basically inside of our modal, I'm going to add another piece of state after the product, and I'm going to say loading and set loading. By default, the loading is going to be false, but where are we going to make the loading to be true is when we actually fetch the product. So we set the loading to true here, and as soon as we actually fetch the product successfully, we can set the loading back to false here again. So it's very simple. What we can do is set the loading to true as soon as we start fetching the product. And the moment when it's actually fetching, it's all going to be true. As soon as it becomes false, we can actually, we have the product, we can just make it false, right? Makes sense. And really easy way we can implement loading. But now, how do we actually change the UI based on the loading state? It's again very simple. All we have to do is based on our loading when it's true and false, I'm gonna paste something in here. So just outside of our dialog panel, just outside of here, I'm gonna actually check if our loading is true. If the loading is true, I'm gonna use paste this div, and it's very straightforward. I'm gonna explain this, what's basically happening here. And of course, this entire div, which is outside of the outside of this current main container div, will be the else condition. So again, this is going to be like the if else condition, and I have done something wrong probably. So let me just quickly get this back over again. I think it's, yeah, is the div is ending till here. So I'm gonna copy this div, and this will be our else condition. So I'm just gonna paste this in. Oh, I'm pasting this in the wrong place. My bad. Oh, that's why I wasn't actually working. So it's actually this div. And I was actually pasting this in the wrong place. So I need to copy this. And the only problem is that there is no closing div here. So we get this entire div, and then we go here. We just need to get this entire div. Let me just get this entire. It's very confusing because I've done it like this, where we have the product.image. So I'm not getting the correct div, but we need to actually get this entire div all the way till here, and then we need to paste in here. Oh, thank God. We finally did this. And then we have the loading, and this is the loading spinner, which I've created using Tailwind. By the way, I'm using something called animate spin, which basically adds this transform rotate of 360 degree. And what I've done is I've just simply created a div. It's a self-closing div of height 8 with 8, and it has some rounded for, which you guys could see in the finished demo. So what's going to happen now is if I click on any of this product, you see this nice loading spinner, right? If you want to see this in more depth, you can just toggle this loading to not true. So this just basically means if it's not true, so now we can see, we actually see this nice. So this is the result, basically. This is what I'm doing, right? It's a nice and simple loading spinner. If you want to add it using like a library or something, feel free and go ahead and add it yourself. But I've just done it, just a simple loader. If you click on that, there we go. And we can see in the newer Next.js version, there's no bugs happening anymore, right? So it's technically fixed now. So that works really nicely now. And you can see it really, really nicely. It works. So the loading's out of the way. And we have this product page done. The next thing which I want to actually do is something still seems a bit off. I don't know if you guys can guess it, but in our finished demo, we can see something still feels off. And that's actually the font. And I told you guys in the beginning that I'm also going to show you guys how to integrate the fonts in the newer way. So that's the last thing probably we're going to be implementing, and then we are done with this build. So let's actually add our font into the project. And the way we actually add fonts in the newer Next.js way is I've added actually a comment for you guys. So it's really easy the way we actually do this in the new way. And we're going to be using the font called Montserrat. And there's a really useful link which you guys can go to the website and try to look for different fonts. But where do we actually add the fonts? Where do we actually start, right? So there are a couple of ways we can add the fonts. You can add it in global CSS and in different ways. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to make it very simple and add it on our root layout, because remember, the layout is the place where we have all the root stuff, right? So we have the root layout, which the header, which displays on every single page. And it's the same with fonts. So if we have our fonts on the root layout, what this basically means is then we can have the fonts on every single page and on our whole application. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create this variable. So this is how they were actually doing in the beginning and actually remove the fonts. But it's the same way, exact same way we use fonts is we basically have this variable, and then this is going to be imported from next/font/Google. Now this is a package they're using for optimizing fonts. So it's really, really clean. And they recommend to use a variable font because a variable font is faster to load and you don't need to specify a different font weights if you're using a variable font. Montserrat in this case is a variable font. So that is why I'm not displaying any weights. But if I actually go here, we can see we have weight, variable, and styles. So we can do all these things, and we also have fallback and preload stuff. So it's really cool that in the new way we can implement fonts. And it's really, really nice because you can look for different fonts in this package, right? You have all these Google fonts. So you can literally use any font you want to use. And try to go on this link and check this out for yourself. So this is like the variable fonts which Next.js recommends you to use. But anyways, let's actually close this. I was doing some debugging before, so I had some things open. But anyways, we have this variable font. Now, how do we apply this font? It's very simple. Again, we have the HTML here, right? So it's again back to the basics, right? So whenever we want to apply it font to the whole, the whole application, the whole website, we apply it over to the HTML tag, right? So it's exactly the same way we do this, and we just use our variable, and we basically say montserrat.classname, and this will apply the font throughout our whole website, and it will work really, really nicely. And it's that simple to actually implement font. And we can literally see now it's exactly identical to our finished build. So that's the way we implement fonts. And when I refresh this, we see our nice loading animations happening. And whenever I click on any product, we see the intercepting route. And we also see a beautiful loading animation. Whenever we click on view full details, it takes us to that product. And if I refresh the page, also takes me to that product. If I click outside of the modal, we see that it actually takes us back to the homepage. Really, really good build. And especially if you want to get started with Next.js fundamentals and all these things, it's a really good refresher onto the different concepts in Next.js. Also, we eliminated one thing, which was the prefetch to false. We don't need to do that anymore, and it just works with the prefetch to true. So it's really, really nice right now. And that's it, guys. That's it for this build. I hope you all liked it, and please give me more suggestions on what to build next. I'm trying to plan a lot of different projects now. Also to revamp my old projects. I've been getting a lot of comments. I know I haven't been replying to each and every single comment, but I've been getting a lot of comments on the GitHub repos have expired. There are so many things, and things have become outdated. So I'm trying to think to revamp all the previous projects I've done with the new Next.js app directory and all the latest stuff. But yeah, let me know what you guys think. And this is not it. So we forgot the last part, and that's actually the deployment. So we can also deploy the application. It's very simple to deploy the apps to Vercel. I know it's not necessary to do this, but it's just something I still wanted to teach. So what I want you guys to do is actually maybe just have a GitHub repo. So what you can do is create a GitHub repo, or you can just install the Vercel CLI. It's very straightforward to deploy. And this is the last part. After this, we're done. So you can just install the Vercel CLI. I've already installed the CLI, and it's just one single command you have to write to deploy this entire project. So you have to install this globally, and then what you basically do once you install the CLI is you go back to your app, and you can go back. And since there are no environment variables here, so it's going to be deployed straight away. I'm just going to type Vercel. I think it's Vercel deploy. So the command is something with production. So if I go here, it's actually, I think if I go to deploy, they actually show you the command, exact command. There's an exact command you need to write, or you can just type in Vercel. To be honest, if you just type in Vercel after installing the CLI, it will ask you for some commands like set them and deploy. So you can just say yes, and I want to deploy to my personal project. There's no link. You can name whatever you want. It's located in the current directory. And that's literally it. It's gonna give you an inspect URL after you press no here because you don't want to modify any settings. And now here we go. We get an inspect URL, and literally that's all. It's that simple to deploy. If you are building a project that has environment variables, it's very simple. You just have to add the env variables from your local thing here. You go to basically your settings and add the variables, and you basically trigger a redeployment again, and it will be redeployed. So we can actually see our, if I refresh this, we'll be able to see our deployment. It's building, and you can see all the stuff here. And it's literally so easy to deploy with the Vercel CLI. It's mind blowing. You just type in Vercel. It's like a magic command, and your whole app is just like deployed in just like a couple of seconds. Really, really powerful. So it's deploying the outputs. I think it's deployed. Yeah, it's ready, right? Really cool. The animation's gonna hop up. I think that there's an animation that happens. It didn't happen anymore. But anyways, we have our domains, and we see we want to be using the custom domain. The automatic URLs always keep on changing, so we want to be using the custom domain, which is assigned to us. And of course, we want to add a custom domain of your own. You can change that as well. And the whole app is now deployed. So let's take a look again. Let's click on any of the products. It works as expected. View full details takes you to that page. Let's try to see if we actually go back. And also let's try to access a invalid product. Okay, so that's not working as expected. We shouldn't be seeing this page. Let's see our local version. Actually, I think I did it the wrong way. I think it's /product/22. Yeah, it's actually like this. Oh, it's working. It's working fine. Yeah. So we can see not found, could not find requested resource. Actually, I went to that /22. It was the wrong route. So we can see it's working exactly how it's supposed to. There are no errors. It's looking beautiful. And yeah, that's literally it. So we deployed the app as well, and that's like literally it. So I'm just gonna get rid of this one and create a new repo with all the updated stuff, so you guys can see the updated GitHub repo. And yeah, that's it. Until then, I will see you guys in the next one.